Hey everybody, Jim here with another video for you. This is 50 Years in Film, 1998. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, and most importantly, please leave comments. I love hearing from you. I love discussing movies with you. Now, before we begin, we'll start with the normal caveats. These are not all the films from 1998, far from it. These are simply the films that I own in my collection on Blu-ray. I am not including any other films from any other forms of physical media or from any movies that I do not own. Second caveat is that this is not a ranking video. This is simply a recap of the films from that year that I have on Blu-ray. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and begin. 1998, again, very underwhelming. There's not a whole lot from this year. I've only got 13 titles. But there are some great films here. So we're going to go ahead and start like we always do. We're going to start with the comedies. And the first one on the list is Practical Magic, starring Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman. It's a fun movie. It's not exactly my cup of tea. The main reason why I bought this particular collection was because of The Witches of Eastwick. But again, Practical Magic is, it's a fun movie, and it's well acted, and I know a lot of people really love it. So the first movie on our list is Practical Magic. The next comedy on our list, Basketball, starring Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who are the creators of South Park. And this is directed by David Zucker, one of the Zucker brothers from the Zaz team who created the Airplane movies and Naked Gun and such. This is a silly movie, really stupid, really juvenile. I really love it. I love this movie. It's one of my guilty pleasures, but I don't care. I absolutely love Basketball. It is hysterical. Now we're switching over to the dramas. And the first one on the list is The Man in the Iron Mask. That's the original one sheet, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jeremy Irons, John Malkovich, Gerard Depardieu, and Gabriel Byrne. This story has been done to death. It's been done quite a few times, different retellings through the years. This is actually my favorite version. I love this movie. I think it's great. I think the acting across the board is phenomenal. Gerard Depardieu is hilarious in this movie. This is a great movie. I love The Man in the Iron Mask. The next drama on the list, American History X, starring Edward Norton, Edward Furlong, and Stacy Keach, directed by Tony Kaye. This is an incredibly difficult watch, but my God, is it good. Edward Norton gives one of his best performances in this movie. Edward Furlong is great in this movie. It is definitely his best performance. And this movie is phenomenal. Again, extremely difficult to watch. There are a couple of scenes in particular that are excruciating to watch. But American History X is a phenomenal film, and quite honestly, I think it should be required viewing. It really gets into how racism and hate is bred, and it's a great movie, very powerful. I cannot recommend American History X enough. Now we're switching into the action. And for my Lethal Weapon set, the fourth installment, Lethal Weapon 4. Directed by Richard Donner, starring Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Joe Pesci, Rene LaRusso, Chris Rock, Jet Li, and everybody and their brother. I do not like this movie. There are things about it that I do like, but overall, this is by far the weakest of the Lethal Weapon series. And the main problem is that it's convoluted. If you look at the cover art from the first two Lethal Weapon movies, it's Gibson and Glover. That's it. Now they've got 20 people on the poster with 20 different subplots, and it's just, I don't like it. Lethal Weapon 4, huge disappointment. But this action movie is phenomenal. Ronin, starring Robert De Niro, Jean Reno, Stellan Skarsgård, and Sean Bean. This movie is incredible. Directed by John Frankenheimer. This is one of the best action movies from the 90s. And it's also criminally underrated. This film was a sleeper hit when it came out. The reviews were very good, and it was a nice, sizable hit on video as well. But then it kind of got forgotten. And as I put this on one of my underrated videos series lately, or one of the latest installments. And as I said in that video, this movie's beloved, okay? But it's kind of been forgotten because when people talk about the great De Niro films, especially from this time period, they talk about Heat and Goodfellas and Casino. Ronin very rarely enters the conversation. And Ronin is one of De Niro's best films. Check this movie out. It is great. Now we're switching over into the sci-fi. And from my Star Trek collection, the 9th installment, Star Trek Insurrection. Starring Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, and Marina Sirtis, directed by Jonathan Frakes. This is the one with the Fountain of Youth. I like Insurrection. I definitely do not like it as much as First Contact, but it is an entertaining movie. I would put it right up there with like Star Trek 6, Star Trek 4, you know, in that area. It's not one of the top Star Trek films, but it's definitely not one of the weakest. But my favorite science fiction by far that year is Dark City, directed by Alex Proyas, starring Rufus Sewell, Kiefer Sutherland, William Hurt, and Jennifer Connelly. This movie's incredible. And again, it was a huge flop at the time. I saw it basically in an empty theater, went in blind, didn't know anything about it other than the fact that it was directed by the guy who did The Crow and starring Kiefer Sutherland. And my God, I was blown away. This movie's fantastic. The visuals are great. The acting is great. The story is great. Everything is great about this movie. And this is like the precursor to The Matrix. I'm not saying The Matrix ripped this off because both films were being done at roughly the same time, okay? But The Matrix actually used some of the sets from Dark City. And when I was watching The Matrix a year later, I kept thinking about this movie because it did. There were so many similarities between the two. If you like The Matrix and you've never seen Dark City, by all means, seek this movie out. Again, the plot is completely different than The Matrix, but there are similarities. And this is a fantastic, incredible movie. Please check out Dark City. Now we're going into horror. And we're going to start off with, Phantasm 4, Oblivion. Starring Michael Baldwin, Reggie Bannister, and Angus Scrimm as the Tall Man. This is the 4th installment of the Phantasm saga. It's okay. This is actually a direct-to-video movie. This was not theatrically released. However, it was part of my box set, and I wanted to pad the list a little bit, so that's why this movie's here. Again, it's entertaining, doesn't hold a candle to the first 2 installments, and quite honestly, I don't like it as much as part 3 either. However, compared to Ravager, which comes out about a decade later, this movie's Citizen Kane, because Ravager is almost unwatchable. And then we've got Deep Rising, directed by Stephen Sommers, starring Treat Williams, Famke Janssen, Wes Studi, and a boatload of character actors. This movie is so much fun. I love this movie to death. It is cheesy as hell. It is goofy. It's great. This movie is awesome. If you've never seen Deep Rising, I cannot recommend it enough. This is by far not an award-winning film, but it is so much fun. And Treat Williams, who I've always loved as an actor, is absolutely terrific in this movie. Rest in peace. He was a great, great actor. And this is a great movie. Then we've got John Carpenter's Vampires, starring James Woods, Daniel Baldwin, and Cheryl Lee. This is a goofy movie. I like it. Again, it's not top tier Carpenter by any stretch, okay? But this movie's a lot of fun. It's not scary, okay? But it's fun. And James Woods gives such an over-the-top performance in this movie. You can tell he's having a ball. As I've said on previous videos, when it comes to James Woods, regardless how you feel about the man as a person, when he's invested, he is a terrific actor. And he's terrific in vampires. But the best vampire movie that came out that year, for my Blade trilogy set, the original, Blade, starring Wesley Snipes, Chris Christopherson, Stephen Dorff, directed by Stephen Norrington. Blade is awesome. They're apparently doing a remake of it, in the MCU with Mahershala Ali, who is a great actor. And, I could actually see him playing the part, although Wesley Snipes is the quintessential Blade. And if they do bring back that reboot, I'm really hoping that they do bring him back in some form. Even if it's just as a little cameo, but it would be great to see Wesley Snipes back in the Blade universe. But Blade is a fantastic movie. It was one of at the time, it was the most successful Marvel movie, even though it was not really advertised as such. It was just advertised as a vampire movie, but Blade kicks ass. It's not a horror film. It's an action movie. Blade 2, on the other hand, is more of a horror film. We'll get to that one in a couple of years. But as it is, Blade is a fantastic movie. I love it. But we saved this one for last, and this is not a horror film. Saving Private Ryan, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Tom Hanks, Edward Burns, Matt Damon, Tom Sizemore, Vin Diesel, and many, many others. This is my steelbook. Saving Private Ryan is an incredible film. It's one of the best war movies ever made, and it's one of Steven Spielberg's best movies. He won Best Director for this movie. The reason why I saved this movie for last, other than the fact that it is an incredible, incredible film, is because the fact that Shakespeare in Love won Best Picture over this film is a travesty to me. I'm not saying Shakespeare in Love is not a good movie. It is a good movie. But Saving Private Ryan is a masterpiece. I cannot say enough about this film. The first time I saw it theatrically, it shook me to my core. And I was surrounded by veterans from different wars, some from World War II, Korea, mainly from Vietnam. And when the film was over, I looked around and all I could see were scores of grown men weeping uncontrollably because of the emotions that this film brought. And even though I'm not a veteran and I never served in any kind of combat whatsoever, it struck an emotional chord with me. And I felt those tears rolling too. Because Saving Private Ryan, it's just an incredible, visceral experience. The first 15 minutes alone with the storming of the beach of Normandy is such an incredible sequence, it'll never be duplicated. And for those 20 minutes, you feel like you are on that battlefield with those men. And when it's all over and you see the carnage, you realize how futile war really is. I love Saving Private Ryan. I think it's a great movie. Not only is it the best movie of this year, it's one of the best movies of the 90s. And that is why we are using this film to end 1998. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please, again, give me a thumbs up, possible subscribe, and leave in those comments below. How do you feel about these movies? Maybe you disagree with me about this whole thing, that you feel that Shakespeare in Love was the superior film that year. But that's it for this edition. I am going to knock out 1999 tomorrow, and I will also give you some future plans as far as what this series is going to entail from this point on. So until the next edition, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you then.